everyone, Elisa with Jots Designs. In this video, I will be trying out NicPro Epoxy Resin. It's a 1-to-1 epoxy. The kit comes with a half a gallon of each the resin and the hardener. It also comes with great directions that include tips and answers to frequently asked questions. There's surface protection, an apron, gloves, a silicone stir stick and spatula, measuring cups that have both ounces and milliliter markings, loads of different colored mica powders, and silver, copper, and gold leafing. There's more included in the kit, and you can check out the unboxing video I did. It's linked in the description, or click the little info box at the top right of the video. For this video, I will be using some silicone pumpkin molds that I got off of Amazon. They're great quality, and they have loads of detail, and they come in 3 different sizes. I'll be using a paintbrush with the mica powders, and I'll use all 3 of the leafing colors for one as well. I picked up these trays at a local TJ Maxx store. You can always find great wood trays and boards at low prices there. I've also got some paper towel handy and a couple pairs of tweezers to use with the leafing. Isopropyl alcohol is a must when working with resin, and it helps clean off the resin from your tools, gloves, and even your surface. I started out thinking I'd use both the orange and the copper powders, but I decided I just wanted to stick with the orange instead. Using bags to store powders is my least favorite method, but it does save space. Be careful when opening them so powder doesn't just go everywhere. I'm dipping the brush in the bag and grabbing a bit of the powder and then just brushing it all over the inside of the mold. One of the downsides of this method of painting the silicone with the mica powders, at least in my dry climate, is the static cling. It's not great when you only want the powder in certain areas and it goes everywhere, but in this case it doesn't matter since I'm covering the entire inside of the mold. I go back and forth and up and down and also in circles to make sure I get every nook and cranny covered. It's not rocket science, but I want to make sure that I don't miss anything and end up with a clear spot in the end. Moving the piece around and using the room light helps make sure I've got everything covered. To clean up the outside of the mold and my gloves, I'm just using some baby wipes, and I picked these ones up at Walmart. Then I just did the same thing with the second mold. I'm using the 2 smaller sizes with the powder. Now it's time to mix up the resin. Again, it's a 1-to-1 ratio and it's measured by volume. Always start by pouring the hardener in the cup first. I cleaned off the stir stick with some alcohol to make sure it was dust and oil free. You can see how cloudy the resin is when I first start mixing, and it looks like it has loads of fine wispies. At least that's what I call them. When mixing your resin, be sure to scrape the bottom, sides, and your stick while mixing. Make sure to dig the stick into the indent at the bottom of the cup too. This all ensures that you mix the resin well. You'll be mixing for about 3 to 5 minutes and the resin will be clear when you're done, but I always just look for the wispies. When you scrape the sides and move the stick around, you'll see wispies follow where your stick went. If you see them, keep mixing. If you don't, then you're good to go. I separated out the resin, though I'm really not sure why, except that I was probably just overthinking things. Then I pour just a little into each of the powder-covered molds, and I begin to dig out the bubbles in the stem with a silicone brush. This took me a while, and I really was just creating more bubbles half the time, but eventually I got them out. I pushed up from the bottom to help expand the stem a bit, and I used a long lighter very quickly to help pop the bubbles at the end. Then I poured more resin in a little at a time to make sure I didn't overfill them. Resin is definitely thicker than water, so it will settle a little after you're done pouring. I used the stick to help top them off, making sure I didn't even reach the very top of the molds. For the larger pumpkin, I'm using the leafing. Again, in my dry climate, everything gets more staticky than normal, so I had a bit of a time getting the leafing off the tweezers. I thought the metal ones would help, but they really didn't make that much of a difference. When I was mixing it all together, some of the silver clumped together, Really, I think it was more that my bag seemed a little bit more compressed, and again, the static issue, so it just clumped a little bit. I broke that apart with a toothpick on the stick. I added a little resin to the stem first so I could get out the bubbles. Then I added a few pieces of the leafing to make sure there were some in the stem. I decided I needed more copper in the mix, so I added that in, and then poured a little at a time, popping any bubbles I saw created by the leafing, then filled it up and popped the bubbles on all three at the end. I let them sit for maybe 16 hours or so, and they were ready to demold. The orange mica ones turned out great. You can see that I still filled them up with a bit too much because there's a bit of a lip, but since it's still been only a short time since I poured, I was able to take my favorite curved scissors and cut off the parts that really stuck out. If you wait too long, the resin will be too hard to do this, so you'd have to sand it down instead. You can also see that the powder is not coming off, so it's a great way to color your resin without having to actually color your resin by putting the powder in, and it uses a lot less powder this way too. When I demolded the larger one, I realized my molds were not shiny inside. I really hadn't paid attention. The mica powder gives it a bit of a shine, but you can see how dull the larger one is, making it so you can't really see the leafing very well. I'll fix that later in the video. First, I'll get the smaller pumpkins attached to their tray. I'll be using JB Quick Setting Epoxy. I like this one in particular because of the cap. I have an H marked on it, so I always keep that side on the hardener side and don't accidentally bond the cap to the tube. There are various brands of this out there, but the great thing is that it sets up in about 5 minutes. It's great when you need a permanent bonding solution. I hadn't used it in a long time, so I had to clear out some of the crusty bits with a toothpick first, and also plunge out a little bit of the resin before the hardener came out. Be sure to plunge out equal parts and mix it well for about a minute. I decided where I wanted to place the pumpkins, and then I added a little blob of the resin to the bottom since the tray wasn't flat. I wanted to make sure that there was enough between both surfaces to grab onto both. For the larger one, I wanted to emphasize the details of the texture, so I grabbed some black metallic folk art acrylic paint. I painted the surface, making sure to get all the textured areas. Then I wiped the paint off the surface with a paper towel, and then cleaned it up with a baby wipe. To make it shiny, I will be using NicPro's UV resin. I like to put some in a black nail polish bottle, that way I always have a dedicated brush if I need it. To make things easier for myself, I attached the pumpkin to a piece of wood with removable adhesive pixie dots. I used 4 of them on this. Then I just put a little bit of the UV resin on and start spreading it around with the brush. At one point, the pumpkin started separating from the adhesive dots from holding it sideways for too long, and it was too heavy. So I just held it upright the rest of the time, and it was still perfect for being able to get all sides without having to touch the pumpkin at all. I did a quick flash cure with my UV LED flashlight, just so that the resin wouldn't move while fully curing. At first, I used cups to hold my light up while curing. After about 6 minutes of curing, it was still very tacky. None of the resin came off on my gloves, but it just wasn't curing right since I had my light up so high. Since I was able to touch it, I just put it on the light's tray and finished curing it that way, with some aluminum foil covering the front to help bounce the light around a bit. You can see how the UV resin was perfect in making it shiny, and the black paint helped bring out that texture. Then I attached it to the tray the same way I did the smaller ones. I'm really loving how these turned out. The resin cured very hard and I had no trouble with bubbles. Check out the description for discount codes and try it for yourself. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. And I'll see you next time. Bye.